안녕하세요. 10분 영어 독서. 출근하자마자 10분 영어 독서 하도록 하겠습니다. 오늘 읽을 차례는 잠깐만요. 오늘 읽을 차례는 12페이지입니다. In the gray, sunny morning, a search of his house and his land was made. Experts went through his papers, his diaries, his letters, his blueprints, studying them for clues. The bottom of his pond was gone over by divers. Nothing that shouldn't have been there was found anywhere on Gawain's property. He's hidden the loot somewhere, said the Prime Minister. I know he has. I recommend that we bring him to trial and find out where. King Basil agreed. A trial was held a few days later. Gawain was brought to the courthouse between two wardens. The family town looked the same as always, with its friendly houses and its wide, tidy streets. But to Gawain, being hauled through this gracious street by officials of the law, it was strange that it should look the same. In court, Gawain declined the help of a lawyer. He felt he needed none, since he was innocent. The trial was ridiculous, as everyone would soon see. He sat waiting for the nonsense to begin. The whole town crowded into the courthouse. They all knew Gawain. They were his friends, his admirers. Some had known him his whole lifetime and understood his character well. He had gone to school with some of them. They had romped together, shared. 종이 쳐가지고 제가 다시 시작하도록 하겠습니다. The whole town crowded into the courthouse. They all knew Gawain. They were his friends, his admirers. Some had known him his whole lifetime and understood his character well. He had gone to school with some of them. They had romped together, shared, enjoyed things. They were all dear to him, and he was a favorite with them. The town was aghast as the charges that had been laid against their beloved goose and had been muttering about it for the past few days. Ever since the trial had been announced, Gawain a thief, how utterly out of the question. However, he had come to be accused of his dastardly crime. The luster of his name would surely be preserved. King Basil sat in the judge's seat, a tired look on his face. Over his head hung the big brass scales, brightly polished, that symbolized justice. Gawain stood alone in a cleared space before him. Many of the spectators had no seats. After Ezra, the bailiff, called the court to order, King Basil got right down to the business at hand. He looked at Gawain and asked, "Do you swear to tell only the truth?" "I do," said Gawain indignantly. "Are you the chief guard of royal treasury?" "You know I am," said Gawain. "You appointed me yourself." "Is it a fact?" shouted the king. "That 29 rubies, 3 golden ducats, several silver ornaments, and calicut diamond are missing from the treasury." "It is," said Gawain. "No need to shout." He had spent a sleepless and agitated night, and he was exhausted. But he managed to hold his head high. He glanced at his friends, and they looked back assuringly. He saw the beaver John, Martin the goat, Lucina May the bulldog, who had named her first son after him. His fellow geese Harvey, Garvey, Wetmore, Jarvis, and Jeb. and many others, and their kind looks gave him courage. Are you aware, said the king, that the Calicut diamond alone is worth millions, and that because of this thieving, we will not be able to build the opera house we had planned, and that furthermore, taxes will have to be raised. No, I was not aware of that, said Gawain. I've had other things to think about. Everyone was attentive. They hadn't considered the consequences of thefts. Who else guards the royal treasury? Asked the king. My good friends Harvey, Garby, and Wetmore. Do you have keys to the treasury? Basil asked. No, said Gawain. Could anyone get into treasury without keys? No, said Gawain. The door is the only way in and out, and it is always locked. Who besides myself had keys to the treasury? Asked Basil. I did, said Gawain. Did anyone else have keys? No, said Gawain. There were astonished murmurs among the spectators, and King Basil had to rap for order. Tell the court this, he said. Did you ever give your keys to anyone else? Were they ever out of your possession? Never, said Gawain. They were always hanging at my belt by day, and by night they were under my pillow. Do you think it possible that in some mysterious way the treasure left the treasure house by itself? A few involuntary titters were heard at the king's question. No, said Gawain heatedly. Did you ever forget to lock the door? Absolutely no, answered Gawain. You agree with me, then? The king went on. That only you and I had access to the royal treasures, since only we had keys. Do you think it likely that I stole those things, thereby robbing myself and my own subject? Tense silence in the crowd. I no longer know what to think, said Gawain. I only know that I stand here falsely accused. I cannot vouch for your highness, only for myself. It wasn't I. Gawain could hear the spectators gasp. He understood that his audacity had shocked them. King Basil himself was furious. Much of our wealth is missing, he roared, and there are only two who could have taken it, you and your king. You stand there boldly denying you did it, and to cover up your own guilt, you are willing to imply that your king might be thief. Gawain could smell the honey on the king's breath. I'm innocent, he said. The king pointed at Gawain and addressed the crowd. You see before you goose who has deceived us all. We trusted him, and he violated our trust. No one could possibly be the thief but he. He looked at Gawain with contempt and said, I hereby accuse you of stealing royal treasure. And I further lay a charge of perjury upon you. You swore to tell the truth. I am an honest goose, said Gawain. And he turned to his friends for confirmation. They failed to meet his eye. They looked embarrassed. He was horrified at what he read on the faces. It was clear they had stopped believing in him. The evidence brought out by the king had convinced them he was guilty. You are a disgrace to this kingdom, said Basil, snarling with disgust. The simple statement, so cruelly delivered, frozen in Gawain's head. He grew confused. Were these things really happening, or was he imagining them? Why are they looking at me with such aversion? He asked himself, perhaps I actually am guilty, but Of what? No, I didn't do it. I didn't. This is some scheme to drive me crazy. Later, they will all come out and say it was a joke. No, they really think I am guilty. Gawain looked at him one by one, and let them see how they'd wounded him. Before I pass the sentence, said King Basil, do you have anything more to say for yourself? Gawain didn't feel like speaking. What is the use? He wondered. They've made up their minds. Why waste words? Well, said the king. Gawain hesitated some long seconds. Then he looked proudly into Basil's eyes, and turned and looked at all the others and said in a ringing voice, I am an honorable goose. How you could judge me otherwise? I do not know. Perhaps our Maker knows. Certainly, he knows how much I once loved you. But I hate each and every living one of you, and with all my heart, for seeing evil in me that is not there. Shame on the lot of you. Is that all? Asked the king. That is all, said Gawain. I hereby sentence you to imprisonment in the castle dungeon until you have the goodness to tell us where you have hidden the treasure you stole, said the king. Then to the guards, put him in irons. Gawain stared at the ground and saw his own yellow feet. They, at least, seemed real. He could feel no compassion from anyone around him. He felt laden, benumbed. Vaguely, he heard the bell in the tower strike 3 times. When the guard approached him, carrying chains, a sudden rage fired his spirit. He saw the wide blue sky outside the courtroom. I will be rid of you all forever, he honked courtroom loudly. He beat his wings, and with a furious short run, he was off the floor and flying out of the big open window. The crowd ran out after him. They watched him soar high over the town, high above all the tallest steeples, and across Lake Superb. They saw him disappear into the forest on the other side. The king stood there and vowed to all gathered around him that they would track Gawain down and see that he got what was coming to him. The real thief, the one who should have been on trial, had been sitting in the courtroom watching the proceedings with much emotion. He was not easily noticed because he was small. Who was he? This thief, a mouse, Doric. He was a friend of Gawain's, though he seldom saw him, tending to associate more than with creatures his own size. Several times during the trial, he had wanted to come forth and announce that he was the thief, not Gawain, but he was afraid. At one point, he felt that he was about to stand up and remind them all that the evidence against Gawain was merely circumstantial. But he couldn't do even that, because it might lead to the confession he wished he had the courage to make. How did the wreck come to be a thief? Well, the treasure house was not so entrance-proof as the king, the architect, the builders, Gawain, other guards, and everyone else thought. True, the walls were stone foot thick, and the floor was stone, and only way in or out was through the heavy, well-locked, well-guarded door. The only way? That was one small, uncemented chink, big enough for a small mouse to get through. Taking something with him and Derek discovered it. 마지막 부분에서 나오네요. 끝까지 가려면 더 아직 많이 남았는데요. 가윈이 억울하게 지금 감옥에 가두어졌고 더렉이라는 이 쥐가 자기가 범인인데 그 이야기를 할 수 없었다. 이런 이야기를 하고 있네요. 감사합니다.